So far, we have learned how to work with user variables in JMeter and how to extract information from server responses. In the previous article, we have discussed that many times it's important for each concurrent user to have its own test data, for example when we're automating a login to a site. So we will have the data in an external file and read one line from the file at a time. To do this, JMeter provides a configuration element, the CSV dataset config. We use this element to read lines from a file and split them into variables. The variables are defined at the start of each test iteration. In the name, we'll be able to name the element as we will see it here in the tree. Here you can add a comment. This is the name of the file to be read. We'll be using the relative file name and store the file in the same folder as we have the test plan. Here we can select the encoding to be used to read the file if it differs from the default. Here we'll list the variable names, which must be separated by the delimiter character. In this case, if we're using a comma, it would be something like this, if we're using two variables. We'll select the delimiter to be used to split the records in the file. By default, it will be a comma, but we can change this. Then we can select if the CSV file will allow values to be quoted. We can indicate here if the file should be reread from the beginning when the end of file is reached. And if we select this to false, down here we can select if the thread should stop while it reaches the end of file. Here we can select the sharing mode. All threads would be the default, but we can also select the current thread group or just the thread that we're executing. So let's see an example using the OpenCart site. In previous lessons, we have created a script that looks for an item on the site and selects it. Now we will add this item to the shopping cart and proceed to check out. We will select the guest checkout option, and here we'll fill the billing details for the purchase. This is the data that we'll want to parameterize. If you want to run the test with concurrent users, we'll want each of them to use their personal details. So let's select and continue here. I had previously recorded these new actions in JMeter, like we've seen in previous lessons. I used one controller for each and recorded one action at a time. I have the action add to the cart, go to checkout, select the guest checkout option, and then send the billing details. After recording, I also removed all the secondary requests. And when adding the product to the cart, I have replaced the product ID with the user variable that we extracted before from the search. So if you go to the Send Billing Details step, we will see that the information is sent in the first post request. Here, we can see all the information that we enter when filling the form on the site. The name, the email, company, address. These are the fields we want to parameterize. So instead of using these values that are now hard-coded, we'll be reading the data from a file. So going back to the CSV configuration, let's change the name of the element to billing detail data. That's how I will be able to see it in the tree. We'll have to specify which file we'll be reading from. Let's use the file test data. And as an example, let's initially parameterize the first three fields from the form. Name, last name, and email. We'll separate the variable names with a comma. We won't be recycling the file when it reaches the end, and we will leave the sharing mode between all threads. So going back to the request, we will replace the values of the parameters that are sent with the variables that we just read from the file. So let's do the first three, the name, last name, and email. So let's have a look at the file that we'll be reading from. This is the data that we're going to be sending. So we have specified a name, a last name, and an email, all separated with commas. So let's save. And going back to JMeter, let's run our test. If you have a look at the post request, we'll be able to see that the variables have been replaced by the values we indicated in the file. Let's now see what happens if when running the test, the file is not found. Let's go back to the file settings, and we will change the name of the file for a non-existing one, hello file. And let's run the test again. If you have a look at the variables that we parameterized, we'll see that the end of file is being sent. So when we inspect what it says, we'll be able to see that it's indicating that the file wasn't found. So now I've learned how to parameterize and use CSV files in JMeter.